A lot of what we had to make sure that we did with the art style was to, in essence, make it still feel like the post-nuclear world that it was. And that is the kind of the weird 50s, but 100 years after the 50s, if the 50s just stayed the 50s, and then bringing in this idea of Vegas.
Josh had one of the first team meetings, and he talked about Vegas as being one of his ideas, but more importantly that it'd be the Rat Pack era. And when he said that, then I was just joyous, because it's just great aesthetics at that time.
When we started the game, there were a few things aesthetically that we knew we wanted to do. We wanted to make sure that the architectural style of homes and as well as the casinos either reflected 50s style from the Vegas era, or it reflected an even earlier time, more like the settlers of the West.
But it's all about Vegas. And so we want to make sure that we have this feeling of sort of this neon, and again, it feels like you're going in there and you're playing around with the mobsters, you're playing around with the Rat Pack.
The scope of this game is massive. You have basically a city in the middle of this area, and then the territory stretches all around the city and does stretch out all the way to Boulder City and to the dam.
When doing Vegas, we didn't want to neglect any of the surrounding areas around Vegas. We wanted to make sure that we had Fremont Street realized, and we have a location called Freeside in the game before they even hit Vegas. And I think once they get a taste of that, they're going to be suitably intrigued to go, okay, well, if that's Freeside, hell, I wonder what Vegas is going to be like.
The Vegas that we were representing was really classic Vegas. This is something that dovetails nicely with the general aesthetic of the Fallout series as a whole.
Everything to do with the Strip is a big artistic playground. One of the strengths we saw about being able to use Vegas as a location is because all those casinos have their own individual themes. It's like a big amusement park the size of a city. And not only do designers have a lot of fun doing quests for those areas, but artists have a fantastic time going, you know what? We can just play around with this location because that's what Vegas is all about.
When I take pictures or give reference and then say, I kind of want to like it like this, I'm kind of going to want to like this, it's very nice to see the artist come back with something that's even better than what I had imagined in the first place. I think people are really going to dig how different it is from the Capital Wasteland and how we sort of captured the feeling of the Mojave.
Fallout, and then in Fallout New Vegas in particular, we really wanted to have sort of a lot of groups that people could interact with.
Factions are really important to us. We didn't want to make it something where it was black and white, where you have this small group of good people against a small group of bad people. It's this very complex mixture of these different people and these different factions.
The player has a lot of control over what he gets to do in the New Vegas area. He gets to influence what happens to an entire region, and in order to have that kind of influence, he needs to side with one of the factions and sort of decide where he tips the balance.
It's all about war, and that's what Fallouts have been about, is war, and so how we're really showing that is war between these factions.
We want the player to sort of have that hesitation when they're like, where do I really stand with these organizations? Like, is it really the right thing to back X, Y, or Z? And even if I go off on my own, what does that mean for everyone who's living in the world of New Vegas?
We have three primary factions, one of which is the New California Republic.
Which is this big sprawling government that's gotten too big for its own good. It's so big, it can't control its own territories, it can't police its own laws, it certainly can't protect its own citizens. On the other hand, approaching from the east, looking to lock horns with the New California Republic, is this huge army of slavers called Caesar's Legion.
Which is this terrifying war band of slaves that has come from out of the Grand Canyon area that is just conquering everything in its path.
NCR and Caesar's Legion are sort of stalemated at the Colorado River and at Hoover Dam.
Hoover Dam is one of our signature locations in the game, and to be honest, it's what everyone is fighting over. It's still able to provide power for part of the region, which is its big draw.
Of course, Mr. House is playing into it as well, because Mr. House doesn't want NCR to win, ultimately, because he doesn't want them to take control of the Strip.
But that's not going to happen, because you're going to work for me.
The general idea is that we have the three major factions, Mr. House, NCR, and Caesar's Legion, but then there are all these sub-factions like help the great Khans or the kings. It's going to make a big difference. You can decide, you know what, I don't think any of you are really particularly well suited to be running this place, so I'm going to fix that. That's where you essentially are either the active champion of Vegas, or you basically just said it's anarchy now.